It's time for us to go into our communities and have some conversations about things that are happening. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but most importantly, it's time for us to be able to drill deeper into why some of the things are happening that are happening. And today we're going to be looking at the collapse of buildings. It's becoming one too many. We have a story here on citinewsroom.com. Construction chamber bemoans collapse of 4 buildings, blames MMDAs. Now, just quickly get into the story. The Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry is blaming Metropolitan Municipal and District Assemblies, MMDAs, for the collapse of 4 ongoing building projects recorded in the country in less than 2 weeks. Now, note the timelines. So it's happening within a 2-week period. Buildings that are currently under construction. So these are not buildings that have already been built in another era or in another dispensation. Currently under construction. In this season, within 2 weeks, the buildings have collapsed. According to the chamber, the failure of MMDAs to effectively assess the work of land developers who intend to put up buildings caused the buildings to come down. The chamber believes that the recent collapse of buildings is due to some land developers who hired the services of quack engineers to supervise construction works, which makes them cut corners when putting up projects. In an interview with Citi News, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry, Emmanuel Cherry, called on authorities to begin cracking the whip on land developers who flout structural integrity rules. And I quote, "There are technologies in the system that are well advanced that can only be manned by professionals. But what do we see? Developers just fall on any roadside mason, call them to site and give them whatsoever amount of money and then expect them to deliver quality for them. Some of the MMDAs also fail to effectively assess the work of land developers." Now, these are some of the challenges we're having as an industry. So, until we crack the whip, it will be very difficult to arrest the menace, Mr. Cherry said. He also noted that a stakeholder engagement will be held next week to iron out their concerns. Now, the notices have gone around, and it's likely that we may have a stakeholder engagement about the issues and address them accordingly so that the necessary observation and recommendations will be put out in the public domain. Where we faulted, we will put it out. Where government agencies also faulted, we will put them together and we will match it from there. The CEO of the Ghana Chamber of Construction Industry hinted. The latest incident is at the Word in Action Church at Old Botiano, comes days after the collapse of the UDS City campus at Sagnarigo and the collapse of 2 separate 3-story buildings at Medina and at Denton in Accra. All right, now, let's take a look at the first incident that we recorded in Adenta. We'll come back and we'll continue.
A tragic incident occurred on Monday at Adenta SDA near Pogas when a 3-story building collapsed. According to eyewitnesses, the owner of the building and foreman were nowhere to be found after the incident. NADMO, the police service, and other emergency services were quickly called to the scene, but the lack of equipment made the rescue effort difficult. Officials on the scene reported that they did not have the necessary equipment to extract the 4th person who remained trapped under the rubble. The MP for Medina, Francis Xavier Sosu, who was at the scene, called for additional support and equipment to aid in the rescue.
My office had an emergency call that 3-story situated at, let's say, Pogas, May Construction had just collapsed with 3 people injured in critical conditions who have been sent to the hospital, and one person trapped under the rubble. So as the Member of Parliament, it was important that I would follow up to know the situation. Indeed, when I got here, I was extremely disappointed because when I got here, the fire service had already come, and the NADMO officers were also here, but they were attempting to remove the rubbles using shovels and pickaxes, and it was obvious that it was going nowhere. And at a point, they were using saws, normal hand saws, to attempt to even cut some of the metals. So we told them that it was not going to work. Obviously, it meant that we needed to do an emergency mobilization to get excavators to come and assist if we were going to get anywhere. So we started the calls. So this is the first excavator that is in. A second one is on its way coming. The hope is that we'll try and rescue the person who is trapped under the rubble. But honestly, I don't know. Already, I just feel like it's a hopeless situation, even though we have to try to do the best that we can.
A construction worker, Osabute Majeslo, explained to Citi News what happened.
Well, actually, what happened is that we were casting the third floor concrete. Then all of a sudden, the building collapsed. The whole thing. There was no blocks. It was only beams that has been cast, and then that was what collapsed. Yeah. I wasn't in the building. I was working downstairs. I was working on stones and assisting the machine operator as well. I wasn't on the building. Yeah.
The fourth victim was eventually pulled out of the debris, but was found dead.
All right, so that's the first story. Yeah. Okay, that was the first one that we experienced there. And as we speak, we're still awaiting, a final report on the details of exactly what happened, why the building collapsed, and what the authorities are doing about it in response to it, do you see? And I think that for me, the longer we delay in this, the more the impunity continues, and I tend to feel the same way as the Chamber of Building Construction Industry,
chamber,
that the MMD is really, I put the blame at their feet squarely. They can do all the dodging and the running around and trying to swerve that it's not about them.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, they issue permits. I don't know, I was with Rema last week when we were talking to, the engineer, Abdullahi Mahama. He was telling us that there's a list of at least about 12 different people who must sign for a permit to be issued.
Before a building starts.
For a building to happen. So all these people are complicit. Do you see? And when a building permit hasn't been issued, all right, and you see a building going up, are you going to stop the person, like as in forcefully stop the person, or you say, oh, we told them to stop and they didn't mind us? Like somebody was saying the other time, and so, oh, they hide and build. How do you hide and build? It's the most ludicrous, position to take ever, for you to say that people hide and build. And it's like, oh, people are recalcitrant and they hide and build. No, you're negligent of your duties. It's as simple as that. You're simply just negligent of your work. If you are the one who's been tasked to make sure that without a permit, people cannot build. It includes enforcement. Have you reported them to the police? Have you gotten them people arrested? Honestly, we can't continue like this. Let's go over to Tamale. When the building collapsed, our correspondent spoke with the PRO of UDS. Take a look.
Prior to their visit, officials of NADMO had been to the site to assess the extent of damage and to do some preliminary investigations into the matter. Upon the visit of the Vice Chancellor and his team to the site, the Vice Chancellor did indicate that from tomorrow, a committee would be formed. That committee will comprise people who are experts in the area of construction. That team will be tasked to come out with a report in the shortest possible time, a report that will look into the cause of the collapse of that building. The report is also expected to make recommendations as to the building that is left standing, its integrity in terms of its infrastructural integrity, but also to look at whether or not it is safe enough for the building to continue going up.
All right, so this was the PRO of University of Development Studies, and bringing us up to speed as to what their position in as far as their building collapse there. But we're going to go over to the latest. The latest one is a church building called Word in Action Church in Old Botiano. And the building came down. A number of workers were in the building when that collapse happened. Our report is brought to you by Calvis Tete, who is our Central Regional Correspondent. Take a look.
Just behind me is the Word in Action Chapel at Old Botiano in the Greater Accra region. This church collapsed in the early hours of this morning, forcing church members to rush here. The over 500 sitting capacity of the church is down. We'll be engaging the National Disaster Management Organization and some church leaders on the matter. According to an eyewitness who spoke to us on site, the 7 construction workers heard a loud noise prior to the building collapsing, and this led to the eventual collapse of the building. 7 persons who were injured have been rushed to the Botiano Polyclinic, but one of them, who is in critical condition, has been transferred to the Kolebu Teaching Hospital.
Because they don't from the Sisi the national the pillars on say entrance be wa ha pillars ni nyina begu no so allow say I just say sorry man e betumi a kire sa because here into me ura inside hu sorry man be about workers spend hu here.
But the member of the church gives us a better understanding of the situation. According to her, they worshipped here on Sunday and did not notice any crack in the premises. She is surprised that the church has collapsed. Tell us, how long have you been churching here?
About a year and a half now.
And when was this building put up?
I can't tell. I can't tell. I joined the church about a year and a half ago.
Okay, so what happened here?
Well, I was called that our church building was coming down, so I came to take a look at what was happening.
Okay, let's look, prior to a building collapsing, there will be signs. Just this past Sunday, you were in church. Mm-hmm. Did you notice anything?
No, there was no sign. There was nothing. I mean, this is a big surprise because there was nothing that indicates that this building could collapse. I mean, look at the building. I mean, there was no sign. As we are all surprised at what has happened here, but we thank God that nobody was hurt. There hasn't been any casualty. I mean, nobody was hurt, so we thank God.
Okay, we also heard that there were some individuals who were around, whether they were working
on it. There's one guy and a couple of people who were around, and so they were taken to the hospital and they are fine. It's disheartening. I mean, we are shocked, we are surprised, and all the adjectives you can use, but we thank God for one thing, that no human life was lost. And we give praise to God, because if you look at what has happened here and no human life was lost, it means that God is on our side. He has protected us. He has taken us out of this misery, and we thank him for that.
Can I say that maybe some of the materials that were used in this thing?
I am not an engineer. I cannot speak to that.
The National Disaster Management Organization in the South Municipality quickly rushed to the scene to begin a search and rescue operation. The 7 persons who were rescued have been rushed to the hospital. But NADMO says they are yet to determine the immediate cause of the accident. Wanda Matthew speaks for the National Disaster Management Organization in the South Municipality.
For now, I can't bring out any assessment yet, simply because the engineers are now trying to work on it and then bring their assessment. So for now, we can't say anything. It is the engineers who will bring their findings for now. But what I can say now is we have only, them themselves said there are only 7 in the building. And those 7 are all injured. So they've taken them to, what do you call this place? Botiana Hospital. And one has been transferred to Kolebu. So that was it.
Experts have begun questioning the structural integrity of the building. ADO2 Alex Nate speaks for the Ghana National Fire Service in the Greater Accra region.
So hurriedly, our men from Wager were dispatched to the scene to offer their assistance to see if there were any lives lost. So they had to call in for our rescue team from our national headquarters to come and complement the efforts of the men here. And when we came, we gathered that there were 7 people who were trapped, but they had been rescued. We just didn't want to take it like that, so we had to do our further checks with our collaborative agencies like NADMO, the police, and the municipal assemblies to be sure if there was truly no one left trapped in there. And truly, we were able to confirm that there were just 7 people who were working on site who were injured. As it stands, 6 of them are currently receiving medical attention at Botiano Polyclinic. The one person is in a very critical condition, has been rushed to the Kolebu Teaching Hospital for much more medical care. And one thing that we also realized is that in our discussion with the municipal assemblies, it came to light that the church didn't have the requisite permit to have this building. They had an initial permit that was granted to them, but per the checks of the municipal assemblies, they realized that the church was building something other than the plan they had brought earlier that was approved. So their permit was revoked. So as it stands now, they didn't even have a permit for the building and then the extension they were doing. So as it stands now, we can say that working theory is that they were operating without a permit from the municipal assembly.
Over 7 persons are believed to have gotten injured as a result of the collapse of the church just behind me. This is the Word in Action Church at Old Botiano in the Greater Accra region. Church members say the issue has taken them by surprise and they are worried that the church has collapsed. Authorities from the National Disaster Management Organization are here to ascertain the situation.
All right, so a 4th in 2 weeks. Now, I don't know if you saw, what was occurring to you as you saw the ruins and the debris of that building there. But there are a number of things that are occurring to me. So first of all, this building is not a new building. It hasn't just been built.
Yeah.
Word in Action Church is not a new structure. There was an extension that was being done. And that's why the construction workers were there. Because that building has been around, I don't know how many years it's been around, but it's been around, and they've been using it. But there was an extension. So here's where my questions come. When you're doing an extension to a building, I presume that you still need to get a permit for a further construction, in the facility. So because you were issued a permit for whatever you put up.
Yes.
Any changes, you still need a permit.
Right,
And of course, we're going to be talking to some experts who can give us better understanding of this.
Yeah.
But the other part of the whole thing that I'm wondering about is your initial building, was it built in a way to accommodate an extension?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to ask. And also, I don't know how the building, the initial building looks like or what it looked like. But I'm thinking the extension, is it vertically or horizontally?
Yeah. So
is
we
it supposed to be on top of the building?
We don't have some of those details, but even sometimes when it's not necessarily on top, it can still impact, especially if the integrity of the existing building is not, it's not strong enough. It's not good enough. You know, it can still impact it, even if you're not putting, you know, pressure from on top. You know, it can impact it. So I don't know. I mean, once all these questions that we are asking, we need an expert to come and answer them for us. But again, it comes down to the MMDAs, right? The metropolitan, municipal, you know, authorities. They are the ones who the buck stops with them, you know. And for me, we shouldn't even turn anywhere when these things happen. They're the first people that we should call and ask and say, listen, why did this happen?
Right.
You see?
Right.
And I don't even think that it is right for us to even leave them to do an investigation. Do you get it? There should be an independent investigation that uncovers what the real issue that happened is. And everybody that's culpable should be charged and dragged to court.
True.
Yeah. Because you see, some people do the right thing. Some people never do the right thing. And some people decide that on Sundays we'll do the right thing. On other days we'll do whatever else we want to do.
Right. And talking about the right things, I think it's important for each and every one of us to, you know, be accountable of our actions.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this in respect, in respect of the owners of these buildings, right? This is not the first time that we've seen buildings collapse. This is not the first time that we've seen buildings collapse. So I don't know why people would always want to do things without, you know, asking the right questions, without going to the right authorities and, you know, find out how to do things. Because I feel like everybody's just, you know, just leaving everything to themselves. They're like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's just do it. Nobody's going to hold us accountable. And at the end of the day, we blame our leaders. We always blame our leaders for, but doing the right thing starts with you.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I remember this was an incident. A friend of mine had just finished civil engineering in KNUST, and he was made, during his national service year, a manager of a project. Now, because the person he was reporting to was a stickler for the right things being done, he says, look, the instruction was, make sure that the drawings are accurate and very specific, right? He does everything else, and then it comes to a spiral stairwell, and that's where there was a hitch. Look, I remember him and I having this conversation, and he went back and forth for maybe 3 months trying to get the design right for the stairwell, right? Now, the reason why it was difficult was because it was a spiral staircase, but the reason why it was difficult because it was supposed to be a concrete spiral staircase. Now, most people do the easy one by taking a metallic steel one. You put a pole in the middle.
And
then build around the side, and then it's easy done.
Yeah.
You can't do that with concrete. You cannot just do that with concrete like that. The measurements have to be accurate. The distances and the angles have to be very, very accurate, specific.
Right.
Otherwise, you get up to a certain point and the entire thing comes crashing down. Have you ever been to Kolebu?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So Kolebu, they have something called, I think the word is cantilever, but I don't know what the full term is. If you go to Kolebu, and I don't know, there's a few still remaining, where in the car park, right, you see where this is the, let's say, the medical block, surgical block, they have these kind of car parks, where when you're driving, you will notice that there's a beam of a sort standing, upright, like there's a wall. And then on top of the wall, there's what they refer to as a cantilever beams. Okay. Now, Abdullah Mahama, we're going to call you. I want you to explain to me how this thing works. Right? It's standing like this. Now, it's concrete. Okay. There's nothing supporting it.
It's no pillars.
There's no pillars. But it's been standing since Gadgisberg's days up to now. Governor Gadgisberg's days till now. It's there is a concrete slab that is sitting like this on top of a wall.
And that's because it's concrete, yeah.
But the thing is that even though it's concrete, it's been standing like this. You should see it. And I've always marveled at that. Then my friend, this same person who I was talking to you about, who was made manager to do this construction, said to me that it's about what they call it's called the zero force effect, where the forces cancel themselves out. Okay, and okay, good. We have Engineer Mahama on the line. Mr. Abdullah Mahama, how are you?
David, I'm fine.
Now, first of all, I want you to take me out of my misery. How are those things in Kolebu standing up to this time, all these years? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Which ones, please?
In the car park of Kolebu, they have these, and I've heard they are known as cantilever beams or something. I don't know if that's correct. When you see the concrete slabs that are on top of a wall at the car park, you know, and you park underneath them, but it's slanted at an angle, but they are made of concrete, and there's no pillars holding them, you know, and they've been standing all these. Yeah. So what are they called, by the way?
They're cantilever slabs.
Cantilever slabs. Fantastic.
Yes.
I wasn't far off. Okay.
Yeah,
How are they standing all these years? I would like to know that.
Proper engineering.
Proper engineering.
Yes.
Okay.
Proper engineering in accordance to standards over the years. So,
okay.
But all the cantilevers have their limit. You can't go beyond a
certain distance,
length.
a certain length. Okay.
Yeah, certain distance. So the longer you go, the thicker the beams underneath them
have to be.
You are not far off because you said cantilever beams.
Yeah.
So some of them, the beams are also, the one that comes underneath them are also cantilever so that they can support the slab.
Oh.
So the beams are taken from, let's say, a third column or fourth column far away. So the longer the beam that spans on the columns, the higher the strength that holds the slab.
Okay.
Which is the cantilever. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
Right.
All right. So where we find ourselves now, 4 collapses in 2 weeks. Who is to blame for all of this?
I think this issue is just to be discussed over and over. The assembly takes a bigger share of the blame. In fact, if I want to say by proportion, they might take more than 80% of the blame.
Wow.
Because of disobedience or recalcitrant human beings, that's why the laws are made.
Yeah.
And once the laws are made and they are so explanatory, I don't see why we will not be holding people to court.
Yeah.
I think 4 years back, I said that my engineers at the assembly ought to be dealt with according to the flaws that they propagate, or they are part of those who bring about this kind of malice of troubles on our built environment. But so when the engineer is hauled to the court, I'm sure in supplying the further and better particulars, because he knows that his life is at risk, maybe he will be sentenced. I'm sure that at that stage, he will be bold enough to say that there is a lot of political influence in decision-making about buildings. All the people I stated to you last week, I mean, those who the embodiment that constitute the technical committee for the issuance of permits.
Yes.
The engineers are made to suggest or make their point very clear at such meetings, whether they are for or against the designs before the designs are approved.
Okay.
And so once you articulate your views and it's not taken, it's better you don't append your signature to the permit being, because the signatories are not only one. You are part of the signatories. But once you have your objections about possibly not sound engineering of a particular building you are certified to give approval, you opt out. I want to say it on this your medium. But for us, I mean, you know where we stand. I've been so firm with my decision making over the years, and I don't have any regret or I don't care about any consequences because I'm not a political animal. The engineers sometimes are also suppressed. They are pinned down when they try to articulate their views based on sound engineering backgrounds. You will see some buildings springing up in communities or municipalities, and when you go to find out, I've had a lot of such encounters, and you'll be told that the MCE has given them the go-ahead to do the construction against the technical objections that have been articulated at the technical meeting by the engineers. There are times I've had some of my colleagues who are working at the assemblies transferred because they stood their grounds to tell the MMDC that this building or that building cannot be constructed because of A, B, C, or D. So the political interference is also key. Last week, a building collapsed, the first one that collapsed on a holiday. 2 days after, in less than 48 hours, the debris that would have been used by us to do the investigation, to look at the strength of the concrete, the strength of the iron rod, the type of iron rod being used, the extent of foundation depth, had been cleared. Meanwhile, when the accident occurred, the MP came to the scene. The MC came to the scene. The NADMO, the fire service, and the police calling the place off. Interference.
I remember that.
How come the dissect or mistake, the police could not assign 2-3 officers to ensure that there's no any human interference until the investigation body comes in to do that investigation? And the debris were cleared. Where is the developer? Where is the owner of the land? Where is the owner of the building? And then I was told that they took the foreman to the court, the police station. What has happened? As long as government or institutions decide to hold information that they are supposed to share to the public to put us in check to their chest, these things, likewise, fire outbreak that has always been like assassin, will not stop because we show the people who have power, who are influential. Because the building that collapsed I don't think it's for any proper walking around. The fact that it was able to be cleared overnight. Just hiring a dozer, a payloader, in the range of 7,000 per day. The low bed is about 4,000 per day. A tipper truck is about 3,500 per day. So just imagine if 3 tipper trucks were hired that same night. And then 2 payloaders of 14,000 were hired over the same night. And a low bed of 4,000, 5,000 was hired to the night to come and do the work. That is in the range of 30,000 plus or 60,000, in the range of 30 to 60,000.
Can you imagine?
It's not you and I. It's not no fuel.
Exactly.
That money is not by any young guy along the line who can just get that money and do it.
Exactly.
So if we see, whatever I've said over the years is suddenly coming home. And you see, as I said on my Twitter handle, that most buildings, historic buildings in Accra, are standing by the grace of God.
Wow.
And I'll send a link. I just, on 22nd October, it's on Ghana Web. I did a Facebook, what do you call it? Presentation, whatever it is. And then Ghana Web picked it and they made it an item, a whole news item. Before then, 2 years ago, I said the same thing, that our buildings in Accra, what I've done in Accra with my investigations, a lot of those buildings are standing by the grace of God. When he turns his eye 1 second, and he leaves the building to stand based on sound engineering standard, about 50% of buildings will come down because the developers, especially individual developers, are disregarding the essence of the engineering fraternity. When you are not well, to get proper dosage, when you get to any hospital, you are made to do some lab tests so that it will adequately give the doctor the right type of treatment and then the right medication to be administered. Why do we ignore the engineers? Because there's this music or song being sung along that they are expensive. It is never true. If you look at the amount that you're going to spend on your building.
But engineer,
yes, sir.
So what if they're expensive? are you going to quantify the value of human life?
Thank you.
Vis-a-vis when a building collapses, the quantification of a human life vis-a-vis the cost of building.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's not an argument that anybody should even make, an intellectual
Yeah.
argument. You know,
I'm even trying to just even use in an event that you don't even bring the human life, which is priceless.
Yeah.
If you are putting up a 2 million Ghana city building, and you are supposed to spend 50,000 Ghana cities or less to do, first and foremost, your soil test, to know the strength of your land, to determine where your foundation should be placed. And that same information is going to help the structural engineer to do the columns and the loading for your building, number one. Number two, the architect to do your design, having to consideration the environmental considerations of safety and health as part of it. The structural engineer knowing the load that your building is going to exert on the ground, giving the adequate column sizes, the reinforcement sizes, so that your building will not collapse like what we are seeing. And then protecting the individual lives and property in the building when it's being occupied. And you are going to spend less than 5% of the cost of your building. Is it something that you cannot do? And then secondly, you see what happened to the Malcolm disaster? Where is the findings? Is it public? The offenders, where are they? What are we not doing right that would ensure that the other engineer who has come to occupy the seat would now do the right thing, because he fears that the next time anything happens like that, he's going to go to jail? Where is the information sharing? Where is it? So as long as we are keeping the findings to our test, and we don't make it public for people to deter people or engineers who have become overly corrupt at the assembly. One other thing I'll break as a bombshell to you this morning is that most of the assembly do not have engineers. I repeat, most of the assembly do not have engineers. That is why they are circumventing the name Works Head. They are building technologists who are not supposed to sanction the approval of any structural building. Unfortunately for us, no, David, make it a news. I said, the mama said that we don't have engineers in about 90% of all our assemblies. 90% and over.
And engineer, why is that? Is it because they don't know the value of the...
No, but by law, you're supposed to have an engineer.
So why is that? Do you have any idea why?
Yeah, they have work head who are building technologies. But by practice, no building technologist can approve of a structural drawing because he's not a structural engineer. So the law gives them another window that in the event where you are not doing a single story and you need to invite in a structural engineer to do the vetting for you, you invite the consortium. When they vet the drawing and they approve and sign, you charge the developer. But because of corruption, lack of knowledge, and the fact that nobody is hauled to the court for the mess that's being created, and you see a building technologist at the assembly certifying a four-story building. On what basis? So the system itself is shrouded with a lot of lapses. And as some of us are heads in the country, how would I say that most buildings are standing by the grace of God and not by engineering, and it's taken on a lighter note? And I went ahead in the same news item to say that, in fact, I'm going to do structural integrity analysis for about 6 buildings last year, and all of them failed. You see, most when they're going to buy a building, an already existing building, it behoves on the buyer to engage a structural engineer and a geotechnical engineer to go and investigate whether the building is sound. That's what we call a structural integrity analysis or report. So that when the findings come, then the person may now decide to buy the building. In fact, there's a very prominent person in this country who had me on one of the stages and invited us to his building at Airport Hills. I will probably, because of this illegal, I won't want to mention the name. But when I did my investigation of the building, I found out that the building was not sound to stand. And as I speak with you, it has gone for arbitration, and the contractor is being able to go and pay the money to the developer and the owner of the said building. So people should engage. Yes, and that building would have been occupied at the time of the investigation. The building was worth 2 million Ghana cedis plus. and had not been completed yet. So had this man not listened to me on a station and tried to go and look for a contact to call us to do this investigation for him, he would have been occupying a building that would have collapsed on him. And he's a very prominent figure in this country.
Wow. So
we need to use the right people. You see, the law at the Engineering Council didn't just make the law by fluke that when a mason who is not certified by the Act is not supposed to do any construction supervision for you, and you go and pick the mason to do a supervision for you, you are doing that at your own peril. And so we should recognize professionals in their field, negotiate with them, and let them do sound engineering design and supervision for you. It's always better. Because I see that all the laws that I read to you last week, the Land Use and Special Plan Act of 2016, the National Building Regulation LI 1630, the Local Governance Act LI 1612, all these laws are there and have empowered the assembly to work. Once the assembly decides to be inept and to sleep, these are the things that we see every now and then. Now, let me just summarize with this church one. There was this building that collapsed in the Eastern region, a 6-story building 2 years ago. It was a church building.
Okay.
If you remember.
Yes.
There was a church ongoing, and then the building collapsed.
Yes.
What has happened to the findings? Even me, the engineer who is nosing around, I've not had the findings yet. In fact, I engaged one of your own reps from the Eastern Keneku, to give me any data he has so far with it so that I can analyze it and then make some submissions on it. 2 years down the line, a church building collapsed, nothing has been done. But you know the system that the churches use, and the mosque, in fact, all these two religious sects, they start a church with about 10 family members. And then they start a foundation by not anticipating that the number would multiply. So as and when they are worshiping and they are so congested, they do their normal fundraising and harvesting and other things, and then with the intention of expanding the church. And mostly, both church and mosques, they use the members of the church pro bono to do the expansion for them. Most of them do not go and engage the professionals and pay a certain fee to be given sound engineering. This building that collapsed yesterday, it was Capitalism who were on the top of the building. Even some of them were told that they have already alerted the management of the church clergy that they suspect the integrity of the building. Before this happened yesterday, for some of the eyewitnesses that I heard yesterday.
Okay.
So that system is being neglected. Oh, it's a church. It's a church of God. It's a mosque.
So were they expanding upwards? They were extending upwards.
Yes, they were doing vertical expansion.
I see. I see.
In both ways, you see, when I'm doing vertical or horizontal expansion, the longer your beams, the higher the likelihood of collapse. Because if you are doing 2 columns at interval of, say, let's say 4.5 meters. And you have, let's say, maybe some 4 iron rods and then 16 bar iron rod, 2 top, 2 down. Immediately you go beyond the 4.5 or the 4 meter span. Every span has to be critically analyzed. Now there are about 4 loads that we check when we are doing construction. There's what we call the dead load and the life load.
Okay.
And you have the dead load in this case is a self-weight of the building itself. So when you are doing a slab, and then you see that the slab is maybe 10 meters by 4 meters, by a depth of maybe 0.2. What is the weight of the column and the slab? Can the column size you are proposing be able to carry the slab adequately? When you clear that one, the second one is the life load. What is the purpose of the building? Is it a classroom block which has maybe a set of maybe 48 students in a class? So now you are not looking at 48 life load. You are taking an average weight of a person, maybe let's say 70 kg. By the 48 number, and you add a factor of safety, let's say 2.5 factor of safety. So in the event where the class is overpopulated, that factor can adequately accommodate the additional load. Now there's other things that the mason or the artisan who has not done any engineer wouldn't know. There's something we call the wind load. Wind. The wind that is blowing your building, your roof.
That's another issue.
A certain load to the building.
And of course, I'm sure that the higher you go, the higher you go, the more you have to factor the wind into
You
the.
are engineer. You know.
Right.
You know what? There's a lot of things that we can go into, and we will do that at an appropriate time. But really appreciate your thoughts and your suggestions in all of this. I'm sure that the authorities. We need to.
I promise I'll send you the link.
Please do. Please do.
Link and the Ghana link. So you just listen. Just read what I stated a year ago.
Yeah, please do. We'll appreciate that. Thank you very much. We've been
Thank
speaking with
David.
Abdullahi Mahama, who is an engineer. He's a building and road construction engineer. And of course, he's an invaluable resource person, when it comes to this space, because he really understands, you know, what's going on. And he has done fantastic work, Do you know the Ebri Road?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They built that in, I think it was 2008 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was the engineer on the project. And it's been there all this
and nothing has happened.
Nothing's happened. So anyway.